He didn't believe in ghosts, but the storm sometimes made him wonder. Logan Miles paused in the corridor halfway between his sleeping unit and the outpost's main console, a steaming cup in one hand and a low ache in his chest that had nothing to do with the cold outside. Inari's 12 howled the kind of howl that lived in your bones long after the wind stopped, that had once terrified him, that was background noise now, familiar, predictable. But not tonight, because somewhere between the mechanical shriek of ice shearing across metal and the distant rumble of shifting glaciers, he'd heard something else. Something wrong. It wasn't the sound itself that chilled him, it was what it wasn't. Not the groan of structure, not the static of equipment. It had been organic, soft, almost a moan. He set the cup down and stepped to the reinforced door, triggering the perimeter scan. Proximity alert, anomalous mass 10M, humanoid profile detected. Status, critical hypothermia risk. External temperature minus 78 degrees Celsius, Logan cursed under his breath and reached for his suit. No one was supposed to be here, not this far south, not this deep into the cycle, and definitely not in a storm like this. He sealed the thermal gear around his frame, oxygen feed clicking into place. The helmet lights flicked on, just two beams piercing into the white void beyond the outpost. Snow blasted against the door as it opened, a violent rush of ice and wind that bit through the suit's outer layer like acid. Visibility almost zero. He scanned left, right, and then he saw it, half buried in a drift just beyond the emergency marker poles. A shape curved and crumpled, not stiff like a corpse should be. A body barely clothed, violet skin unnatural against the snow. She lay face down, one arm awkwardly folded beneath her, the other stretched toward the outpost door as if she had been reaching for salvation and collapsed inches too soon. He moved, boots crunching snow. Every step brought a new gust that threatened to knock him off balance, but he powered through. When he reached her, he dropped to his knees and turned her over gently. She was breathing. Barely. Her skin was a deep bruised lavender, marbled with frost. Her lips were cracked, bloodless. One leg was bare to the thigh, her torso covered by a torn strip of polymer fabric that looked more ceremonial than protective. Her arm, fractured at the forearm, had been tied with cloth, blood frozen into the fibers. Her face was striking even half-frozen, high cheekbones, a delicate jawline, long black hair matted with snow and sweat framing alien features that were almost human. But her eyes, when they opened, were the furthest thing from alive, violet, glazed, haunted. She opened her mouth. No sound came, just breath. Then barely a whisper, "Make me your personal slave, human." Logan froze, not because of the words themselves, but because of the way she said them. Not with seduction, not with intent, not even as a plea. It was rote, like a prayer. She collapsed before he could react. He swept her up into his arms, careful not to jostle the broken limb, and turned back toward the outpost. She was burning with fever but shivering like she'd never feel warmth again. Inside, the blast door sealed shut behind him, locking out the blizzard's wrath. He lowered her onto the med-unit table and activated the heat field. Soft red lights glowed around her as the system calibrated. Her vital stats, temperature, heartbeat, oxygenation, all dangerously low. He moved fast, stripped the frozen cloth from her body layer by layer and covered her with thermal blankets. He wasn't trying to undress her, he was trying to save her. She had no boots, no gloves. Her thighs were covered in bruises, old and new scratches. One hip bore a raised scar in a spiral pattern, branding, maybe. The other had what looked like a surgical implant, inactive but still alien in its subdermal glow. And on her wrist, almost fused into the bone, was a metal band. He leaned in. Engraved text, property identifier code 391 LKT. His stomach clenched. He'd seen that before, long ago in another life, in a war zone filled with bodies that screamed without mouths. He took the scalpel from a medkit and sliced the band away. She didn't flinch. He dropped the metal on the tray beside her. It landed with a sterile clink that somehow echoed in the silence. He turned his attention to her arm. Compound fracture. She'd wrapped it herself, and badly, likely during escape or a fall. He injected a low-dose pain inhibitor near the joint, realigned the bones with practiced ease, and sealed them in a pulse stabilizer. Her body tensed once, then went slack. She shouldn't have made it this far, he muttered to himself, more thought than speech. The storm outside screamed against the walls. Wind whipped the siding, metal groaned under pressure. Inside it was quiet, only her shallow breathing and the hum of the med table's diagnostics filled the space. Logan stepped back, removed his helmet, and scrubbed a hand down his face. What the hell was she doing out there? And why that phrase, "Make me your personal slave, human"? It hadn't sounded like a request, it sounded like a sentence she'd been forced to learn, something burned into her, culturally, psychologically, like the last card a dying prisoner was taught to play. If she was a fairy, one of the scattered alien subspecies caught in the chaos after the collapse, then she was likely taken during one of the outer system raids. Enslaved, shipped, resold, abused, broken. She didn't ask for help. She offered herself as property because that's what the universe had taught her she was worth. He moved to the corner, pulled an insulated chair to the wall, and sat down, watching her. She didn't move, but her hand, still beneath the blanket, trembled once. She was alive, and Logan hated that he knew what that kind of survival looked like. He'd seen it in war, in prisoners of conflict, in young boys forced to carry rifles taller than their bodies, in women trained to smile through screams, in his wife's eyes that one time, that single moment of helplessness before the shuttle broke apart in orbit and left him screaming alone in a life pod. He stared at the fire core flickering in the distance. He hadn't saved her, but this one, this nameless, broken, half-frozen woman, she was still breathing. And whatever she thought she was worth, he would prove otherwise. Tomorrow there would be questions, but tonight there was only firelight and silence and the first heartbeat inside this outpost that didn't belong to him in 3 long years. She didn't move for 12 hours. Not a twitch, not a murmur, just breath, thin and shallow, like her body had forgotten what normal living felt like. Logan checked her vitals on the med screen again. Slight improvements, pulse irregular but climbing, oxygen saturation stable, core temperature within survival range. She would live, at least through the next cycle. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt haunted. He stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, staring at the slight rise and fall of the blanket draped over her. The storm outside hadn't let up. The winds were screaming louder now, gusts slamming against the reinforced panels hard enough to shake loose dust from vents. Anchoress 12 was in full rage. Death lived out there in the cold. Yet somehow she had made it to his door. She shouldn't have. And if he hadn't opened the hatch, she wouldn't have. That thought sat wrong in his gut. He turned away from her and stepped into the galley. The outpost was small, 3 rooms and a corridor that led to the generator below. He poured a cup of hot mineral tea, held it between both hands. Even with the heat running, the air was always dry here. Thin, like everything on Anchoress had to be earned, including breath. He sipped the tea, staring out the small hexagonal window near the sink. Nothing but snowblind white. When he returned to the med bay, she was awake. Not fully, but her eyes were open, slightly unfocused, blinking against the overhead light. Her head shifted just enough to register the room. Her lips moved without sound. Logan stepped forward slowly, crouched beside the table. "Can you hear me?" No response. He adjusted the light, dimmed it, careful not to overwhelm her. Her pupils were wide, a little slow to react. She turned her head toward the sound of his voice but still didn't speak. He reached for the water flask on the tray, held it out to her. "You need fluids. Sip slowly." She stared at the flask, then without moving her eyes from his, reached up with her uninjured hand and took it. Her fingers trembled. She drank too fast, coughed once, then again, the sound raw and painful. He didn't touch her, just waited. She wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist. Then, quietly, she spoke. "Where is this?" "Outpost Theta 4. Southern Glacier Range. You're on Anchorus 12. That seemed to mean nothing to her. "Cold planet," he added. "Uninhabited except me." Her brows knit together slightly. "Why?" "Because I like the quiet," he said. She looked away. He waited. After a moment her gaze flicked back to him. "Are you the owner here?" The word hit harder than expected. "I'm a station keeper. Only personnel within 200 clicks," he said. "No one else is coming." She processed that in silence. Logan stood, walked to the shelf, and took out a nutrient bar. He unwrapped it and placed it on the tray near her hand. "You haven't eaten in a long time. Start slow. Don't force it." She glanced at the bar, then at him again. Suspicion flickered across her face, not the kind that questioned his motives, but the kind that questioned her right to eat at all. She didn't reach for it. "You're safe here," he said. The words didn't land. She flinched slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough. Her entire frame tensed like those two words meant danger, not comfort. He sat down across the room at the desk near the monitoring panel. Gave her space. Didn't speak again. 10 minutes passed. Finally, she reached for the food. She tore off a corner with her teeth, chewed quickly, swallowed hard. Her body jerked as the first bite hit her stomach. She paused, staring at her hands as if unsure they belonged to her. Then another bite, and another. When she was done, she sank back into the cot, drained. Her hand still clutched the wrapper. Logan leaned back in his chair. "Do you remember how you got here?" Her gaze fixed on the ceiling. "I walked. In that storm." A pause. "I didn't want to die in the cage," she said softly. He looked up. "Someone was holding you?" She nodded once. "Were you on a ship?" "Docked. I escaped during refuel. It was dark, loud. I followed the snow." Her voice had a broken rhythm, like each word cost her something. "You didn't know I was here." "I didn't care." Silence stretched between them. Logan looked at the scar on her neck. The band he'd removed still sat on the metal tray beside the medkit. Property. The word might as well have been branded on her soul. "Why did you say that?" he asked quietly. She didn't pretend not to understand. "That sentence," he added. "When I found you." Her eyes closed. A shiver passed through her. "Because it was the safest thing I could say." He didn't speak. "It's what they taught us. If you're caught, offer yourself. Become useful. Become nothing. It might save your life." She opened her eyes again. "It worked once." That made his chest tighten. "You thought I'd hurt you." She nodded. "I thought you'd accept the deal." "I didn't," he said. "No," she said, her voice nearly inaudible. "You didn't." She shifted, wincing at the pain in her arm. He moved instinctively, but she held up a hand, weak but firm. "I can do it," she said. "Just slowly." Logan backed off. Sat again. Watched as she adjusted herself on the cot, teeth clenched against the ache. Then, softly, "You have a name." "Logan." She repeated it once under her breath. Then, after a pause, "Iari don't have names. Not until they're free." He didn't say anything. "Mine was taken," she added. "When I was 10. Logan's hands tightened into fists, then slowly relaxed. "I'm not going to ask what happened," he said. "Not unless you want me to." Her eyes moved to his, for the first time not with fear, with curiosity. "Why are you alone here?" she asked. His answer came slower. "I lost people," he said. "Family. In a crash. I was the only one they pulled out breathing." He didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. That was years ago. "I came here after. For the quiet." She looked around. "And did it help?" "Not really," he said. "But there's no one here to ask questions." They sat in silence for a while. Then, almost shyly, she asked, "What happens now?" "You rest. Eat. Get your strength back. And after, you decide." She stared at him for a long moment. "No one's ever said that to me." He didn't answer. She laid back on the cot, her good hand resting over her chest, the other cradled by the stabilizer. Her breath slowed, steadied, but her body never fully relaxed. Sleep would come eventually, but not trust. Not yet. Logan sat in the corner, arms crossed, listening to the wind. It beat against the outpost like it was trying to remind him that death was always outside, but tonight someone had chosen life even if she didn't know why yet. And maybe neither did he. The fire was the only source of warmth left when the storm devoured the power grid. It happened just after night's cycle began, as Logan sat reviewing equipment logs from the relay tower. The first sign wasn't noise. It was the sudden stillness. The subtle hum of machinery cut out in one breath, leaving a vacuum of silence so complete it set his nerves on edge. Then the lights dimmed, then died. He rose immediately, instinct overriding thought. In the hall, emergency strips flickered to life in soft orange hues, casting the narrow corridor in the glow of half-light. He moved quickly, shoulder brushing against the wall, steps heavy but practiced. In the med bay, Relira sat up, her face drawn in alarm, pupils wide in the dark, the blanket clutched around her frame trembling with her. "It's all right," Logan said. "Backup grid failed. Happens during magnetic storms. Just the wind getting cocky." She didn't respond, but her breathing hadn't steadied. He could see it, tight, rapid, shallow. Panic tried to find her, clawing at the edge of her restraint. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. She looked at it like it was a weapon. "I won't touch you unless you want me to," he said calmly. "But there's heat in the central room. You'll freeze here." Still no answer, so he stepped back. "I'll leave the door open." He disappeared into the corridor without waiting for a reply. In the center of the outpost, he'd already activated the combustion core, an old-fashioned emergency furnace installed in every solitary weather station across the ice belt. Small, fuel-efficient, and absurdly reliable. He stoked it to full flame and laid 2 thick furs on the grated floor nearby, one on either side. He didn't look up when she arrived, but he knew the moment she did. Her footsteps were slow, tentative, and far too quiet for someone uninjured. Still, she crossed the room, blanket wrapped around her like a second skin. She sat, not close to him but not across the room either, somewhere in between, just within reach of the fire's glow. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The orange flame cast dancing shadows along the ceiling, flickering against their faces. The wind howled beyond the walls, a beast licking at the steel shell of their fragile refuge. Inside, everything was still, suspended. Rel turned toward the heat. She was shaking. Logan glanced at her arm brace, the skin was inflamed around the pressure points. She hadn't said anything, but the pain was still there, lingering beneath the silence. He reached slowly for the med pack, placed it on the floor between them, and opened it. "Would you let me adjust the fit?" he asked gently. She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the tools. "I can do it," she said. He nodded and slid the pack toward her. Her fingers were slow, deliberate. She loosened the binding herself, wincing only once. When it was done, she wrapped the blanket back around her frame and turned slightly toward the fire again. Logan leaned back against the bulkhead wall, arms crossed loosely. She spoke first. I thought you'd chain me. His gaze flicked toward her, unreadable. Why? Because that's what comes after food, she said. Her voice wasn't bitter, not even resentful, just tired, trained. You show kindness, then the chains come. That's not how things work here. I didn't think things worked at all on a world like this. He let that hang between them. You're not the first broken thing to end up here, he said. That made her look at him, but he wasn't looking at her. He was staring into the fire. There was a team before me. Scientists, cartographers. They called it a terraforming test site, but the funding dried up. One by one they were reassigned. Some didn't want to leave. One refused and froze 2 kilometers out. He paused. I volunteered to come after. Permanent post. Why? He shrugged. No one here to lie to. She said nothing, but her eyes lingered on him now, more openly than before. Studying, not in suspicion, but in calculation. Quiet empathy, or perhaps the seed of it. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, then, do you believe in freedom? He blinked. The question surprised him more than he expected. I used to, he said. And now I believe in quiet. She turned toward the fire. We're taught that freedom is just a word. You say it too many times and people notice. Then you disappear. Who teaches that? The ones with collars. And those who put them there. He didn't ask for details. Not yet. But she offered them anyway. I was born in a dome colony on AAR-6. The moment my skin pigment darkened, I was tagged for auction. He felt his jaw clench. We don't get names, she added. Not officially. I was called the 137 for most of my early cycles. Do you have a name now? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, Rel. Rel, he said it aloud, testing the sound. She looked at him sharply, not in alarm, but as if she didn't expect to hear it said without venom. I haven't heard it in someone else's voice for years, she murmured. It feels wrong. Feels real to me, he replied. She shifted slightly. Her shoulder brushed the edge of his fur. She didn't pull away. Outside, the wind slammed against the wall again, but neither of them moved. I had a daughter, Logan said suddenly, his voice roughened. Rel turned her head. She was small. Fierce. Always insisted on sleeping near the fire, even on hot nights. He glanced at the flame. Her name was Leia. She died in a shuttle crash along with her mother. A long silence followed. Then Rel said, I'm sorry. I'm the one who survived, he said. She lowered her gaze. Then, softly, I think surviving is the worst part. He nodded once. Sometimes. Their eyes met again. Not long, but long enough. Rel's voice dropped into a whisper. You don't want me. But you keep me alive. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he leaned forward slowly, watching her face, giving her time to flinch, to back away, to say no. She didn't. He reached out, gently took her hand, the uninjured one, and brought it to his lips, pressed a soft kiss against her palm. Her breath caught, not from fear, from confusion. She looked at their hands, then at him. You don't want to use me. No, he said. I want you to decide what you are. And if you don't know yet, then stay until you do. She nodded once. Then, for the first time, her body visibly softened, just slightly, just enough. She didn't speak again, and neither did he. But that night, she didn't return to the medbay cot. She stayed by the fire, not close, but not far. And when she slept, her head resting on a folded blanket, her arm tucked beneath her body, her face was turned toward him. Logan didn't move. He sat with his back to the wall, eyes half closed, listening to the steady rhythm of her breath under the crackle of the flames. Not peace. Not yet. But presence. And sometimes that was the beginning of everything. The storm broke with the sound of shattering silence. After 3 days of shrieking winds and walls that moaned under pressure, the sudden stillness made Logan stir. He opened his eyes slowly. The lounge was dim, painted in the orange glow of the dying fire core. Relira still slept beside it, curled into the makeshift bedding like a shadow learning warmth. Her breathing had steadied sometime during the night. He didn't wake her. Instead, he rose and moved quietly through the corridor, resetting the generators now that the pressure outside had stabilized. With the storm retreating into the mountains, the outpost hummed softly back to life, systems blinking green, heaters re-engaging, diagnostics syncing. It was strange how quickly the cold could become a companion. Even stranger how quickly silence had begun to feel shared. By the time he returned, she was awake, still wrapped in the blanket, her hair loose and slightly tangled. She sat cross-legged by the fire, hands cupped around a steaming mug of tea he hadn't seen her make. Her eyes found his as he stepped into the room. "You were right," she said. He raised a brow. "The fire is better than the insulation." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, just a flicker, but she noticed. The air between them felt different. Not warmer, but easier. Logan dropped into the chair across from her and picked up his own cup. For a while they drank in silence, the fire crackling quietly. Outside, a thin blue hue began to break through the clouds, Anchorus's closest imitation of dawn. Then Rel set her mug down carefully and looked up. "I want to tell you something." Logan didn't move. "I think you deserve to know who I am." He nodded once, giving her space. "My name is Rel Teeth," she said. "I was born on AR-6, in a biodome settlement controlled by the Syndicate of Systems. My people weren't citizens. We were labor-bred, registered under numerical tags at birth." Her voice remained steady, but her shoulders were tense. "I was assigned to agricultural engineering. My aptitude scores were high. Too high. Someone noticed. I was pulled from the dome at 13, sold to a trade broker from Vax Prime." Logan listened without interrupting. "After that, it was transport after transport. Contracts, renegotiations. My body and my skills sold to whoever paid best. Some wanted a translator. Some wanted a servant. Some just wanted obedience." She exhaled, her jaw flexed once. "I ran 3 times. The 3rd time, they broke my arm, kept it from healing. Said the scar would teach me not to disobey." Logan's hands tightened around his cup. "I started learning ship codes," she continued. "Listening, watching. I waited, and 2 weeks ago, I used a breach in a dock's maintenance routine to override a secondary hatch. Slipped out wearing nothing but a thermal shift." Her eyes found his. "I didn't know what planet I was on. I didn't care. I just didn't want to die in their hands." A beat of silence. "You expected to die in mine?" "Yes." Logan didn't speak immediately. He let the words settle in the air, heavy but honest. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "You're not a thing, Rel." "I don't know how to be anything else," she said. "Not yet." He nodded slowly. "That's okay." She blinked at him. Then, after a moment, asked, "And you? What broke you enough to choose exile on this frozen world?" He looked into the fire for a long time before answering. "My name is Logan Miles, former combat engineer. I served in the Atrix border conflict. I wasn't built for war, but I knew how to build things. Bridges, bombs, outposts." His voice was steady but distant, like walking back into a dream you didn't want to remember. "My unit was hit during a civilian extraction op. I made it out, barely. After that, I got rotated out of combat duty, took a shuttle with my wife and daughter to a rehabilitation colony. Rel sat quiet, watching him. We never made it, he looked down into his cup. Some freighter's NAV system clipped our shuttle mid-flight. The rescue team pulled me from the wreckage. No one else. His throat tightened, just slightly. I signed up for Anchorage 2 months later. They said the silence would help. Did it? No, he glanced at her. But it made me honest. She gave a small nod, more acknowledgement than agreement. I kept seeing their faces. My daughter's shoes were still strapped in when they found her. I can't forget that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Two people sitting on the far edges of ruin, looking at each other through the smoke of memory. Then Rel said quietly, "You carry your guilt the same way I carry my chains." He met her gaze. "I don't want to save you, Rel." She tilted her head. "No," he said. "I want you to learn what saving yourself looks like." Her throat bobbed. "That's harder than you think." "I know." They sat like that for a long while, the fire faded slowly, embers glowing soft red against the dark stone beneath it. Outside, the storm had passed completely, leaving only a world of white, vast, empty, quiet. Logan stood. "Come with me." She hesitated. He didn't repeat himself. Still wrapped in a blanket, she rose and followed him down the corridor, barefoot but steady. He led her to the observation room, a narrow alcove with a wide glass window facing the South Glacier fields. The sky above was clear for the first time in days. Anchorage was breathtaking when it wasn't trying to kill you, endless plains of cracked ice, frozen ridges stretching like jagged scars, and above it all, stars so many they looked like dust. Rel stepped closer to the glass. "I've never seen it like this." Logan stood beside her. "This station was built to watch the sky," he said. "Not survive it." "And yet here you are," she murmured. He didn't reply, but when she turned to look at him, her eyes didn't carry fear anymore, just something quieter, like maybe for the first time she believed she might stay. Not as a prisoner, not as a fugitive, but as something else entirely. And Logan, who had spent years believing silence was safer than connection, stood beside her and said nothing, because sometimes no words were needed. The dead had been spoken for. The past had been named. And now, finally, there was room for something new. The sun didn't rise on Anchorage 12, not truly. But when the storms cleared and the sky opened for a few hours, the light shifted from darkness to an aching shade of blue that shimmered faintly across the endless snow. It wasn't warmth, but it was a kind of promise. And in this place, promises were rare. Inside the outpost, the silence was different now. Not dead or cold, but resting. Logan sat at the workbench, reassembling the primary comm array component with hands that moved from memory. The device wasn't broken. He wasn't even sure why he had taken it apart. Maybe he just needed to keep his hands busy. Maybe he needed something small he could fix. Behind him, Rel moved through the space. She didn't hover anymore. She walked barefoot, still careful, but not afraid to be seen. The thermal blanket was gone now, replaced by an old synth fiber jumpsuit he'd offered from the supply locker. It didn't fit her perfectly, loose at the shoulders, short at the ankles, but she wore it with quiet dignity, like it was the first thing that had ever truly been hers. She crossed to the food shelf, retrieved a pack of protein meal, and returned to the fire core. Sat down. Didn't look at him, but she didn't hide either. Logan watched her from the corner of his eye. Her movements were precise, methodical, like someone who had always been punished for taking up space and was only now relearning what it meant to exist without permission. "I ran diagnostics on your arm," he said eventually. "The fracture is healing faster than expected." She nodded. "My kind regenerates soft tissue quickly. But the pain lingers longer." "How bad is it?" She hesitated. Manageable. He didn't push. She was beginning to speak more now, but it came in layers, guarded, economical, like someone rationing not just words but trust. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then she asked quietly, "Why did you kiss my hand?" Logan didn't look up. Because it felt like the right thing to do. But what did it mean? He set the half-assembled comm unit down and turned to face her. "It meant that you're not a thing," he said. "Not property, not a transaction. It meant you're a person, and that you mattered. Even if it was just for that moment." She held his gaze. "I didn't know it could feel like that," she whispered. A long pause. Then she stood, walked across the room, stopped in front of him. She looked different in the blue-hued light, less like a survivor, more like someone caught between past and possibility. Her dark hair framed her face in soft disarray. The bruises were fading, the haunted stillness in her eyes gradually giving way to something else, not hope, not yet, but hunger. Not for food, not for safety, for identity. "I've never touched someone by choice," she said. Not without fearing what came next. She reached out slowly, fingers brushed the back of his hand. Paused. Trembled. Then stayed. He didn't move. "I don't want to be afraid of you," she said. "But I am." "You should be," Logan said quietly. "Not because I'll hurt you, but because I'm still learning how not to hurt myself." She let out a slow breath. Her hand pulled back, not in retreat but in thought. "You remind me of a broken window," she said after a moment. He blinked. "That's poetic." She shrugged. "It's not a bad thing. Broken windows let air in. Sometimes light, sometimes storms, but they're honest." Logan chuckled. "And what are you?" "I think I'm still the glass on the floor." He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Instead, he stood, stepped around her, and retrieved something from the wall panel, a small rounded object, tarnished metal with a leather strap. He returned and offered it to her. "What is this?" she asked. "My daughter's music locket," he said. "She used to wind it every night before bed. Said she couldn't sleep without it." Rel turned it in her hands carefully, reverently. "Does it still work?" "Sometimes." She pressed the tiny latch. The sound that drifted out was fragile, warped with age, but still recognizable as melody, a lullaby, slow and simple, the kind meant to calm a child before dreams. Rel closed her eyes and listened. When the song faded, she handed it back. "No one ever gave me anything they loved," she said. Logan didn't take the locket. He pushed it gently back in her hand. "Then now someone has." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she pressed the locket to her chest. That night, the fire burned low, and the outpost felt heavier than usual. Logan lay on the cot in the med bay, fully clothed, half awake. The weight of memories pressed on him like snow on the roof. He heard the soft shift of footsteps in the corridor but didn't rise. Then she appeared. Rel stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes catching the glow of the emergency panel light. "I can't sleep," she said, "too quiet." He sat up. "Want to sit?" She hesitated, then nodded. She crossed the room and sat on the floor beside the cot, her shoulder brushing the mattress. She didn't say anything else, just closed her eyes. Logan leaned back. Time passed. The quiet became less heavy. Then, softly, "Would it be all right if I stayed here? Just until I fall asleep?" "Yes."